Live.
Okay.
Hello, hello, world, and a special hello to today's guest, Ann McCallum Staats. Let's settle this perplexity for once and for all. Sometimes Ann McCallum, sometimes Ann Staats.
Just to make life confusing, you know. I mean, all my
But
books say Ann McCallum Staats, so I answer to anything. But the books say Ann McCallum Staats.
what does your family call you?
Late for breakfast, Ann. I mean, my official name, to be honest, is Ann Stotts, and I so it's always a little tricky. I have to, say, well, Ann McCallum Stotts on the contract or on the book. But depends what venue I'm in that I have to use which name. It's quite confusing.
So before I forget, I always forget to introduce the program when I get excited, and I'm very excited to host you today.
Me
And
too.
I'll tell why in a minute. I am Mel Rosenberg, and I'm the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. And I'm here with a special guest. You've already published about a dozen books, and they are primarily nonfiction,
Mhm.
uh, but fun nonfiction. We're going to
I
find
hope
out
so.
how you do that. And we are celebrating your brand new book, which is called, it's a mouthful, Fantastic Flora, the world's biggest, baddest, and smelliest plants. And this is published by MIT Kids Press, which is an imprint of Candlewick, whom I love very much. And when does the book launch?
The book launched this week, actually, on Tuesday. So yeah, I know. We have a number of events. Oh, thank you. I know.
And
We have a number of events coming up. First one is on Saturday for a book launch, and then we've got a bunch of other stuff coming up too. So I'm super excited.
that's wonderful. And
Yay.
And tell us a few words about this book. It's
Sure.
incredible. Probably one before you do, I'm going to forget. I'm going to say everything I have to say, so I don't forget to say. So Susan Johnston Taylor, who is one of the most brilliant and kind authors in this realm, I want to call it business, but it's not really a business. Uh, um, Connected us. And thank you so much, Susan. And she
Yes.
wrote to me. She says, "Yes, Mel, I know that usually you interview people that have written 32-page picture books. But the good news is this one is less than 140.
There you go. There you go. And it has lots of pictures. So really,
Tons of
it's
pictures.
not it's not total text, the whole thing. But yeah, so yeah, this is my new baby. And it's actually illustrated by Zoë Ingram. She did an amazing job. Um, and basically, it started when I was looking out my office window and I noticed all the trees and the plants and, kind of different colors during different seasons of the year. And I was like, you know what? Everybody thinks plants are so boring. And, kind of me too, because you walk past them. I mean, they're pretty, but, what do we really know about plants? So I gave myself this challenge and I said, okay, I am going to, just see if I can make it interesting. And I started doing some research and I was like amazed. I mean, there's, seeds that explode, there's fireproof trees, there's, leaves so big, lily leaves so big that when they float, they actually can hold a human being. And I was amazed at all of these adaptations. So anyway, long and the short of it is, you asked me what the book is about. It is about these incredible adaptations from, the big, the bad, the smelly, and the really, really strange types of plants all over the world.
It's like a Ripley's Believe It or Not. Uh,
Exactly. There you go. And I
about
really tried to make it interesting and fun and cool.
it is interesting and fun and cool.
Thank you.
So what it's great. And it's like not your regular picture book. It's for kids, let's say you write between 7, 8, and 10, and I think that that's the right age, kids that can read
Yeah.
already, and you want to pique their curiosity about the wonderful world that we live in. What are
Mhm.
your favorites? You have huge trees and huge leaves, and then you have poisonous
Oh,
plants,
I
and
mean,
then
asking, this
you
is
have
like
weird
saying
ones.
which
Uh,
child is your favorite.
huh?
This is like saying which child is your favorite.
That's
But
my job. That's my job, man. Which child is your favorite?
well, okay, so I'm not gonna use the word favorite, but I will use the word up there and really, really cool. And I'm just trying to, oh, here it is. Okay, so this is
Well,
actually
if it's up there, don't talk about the big trees. If it's up there, that
no,
would be a bad pun.
this is a down low one. This is a smelly down low
Ah,
one.
okay.
And it is actually called the Dead Horse Arum. And I want to just pause for a second because what a name, Dead Horse Arum. And so the reason that it's called that is because it's this flower and it smells like rotting meat. It has like this tail looking thing. Well, here, let me show you again. So it has like this tail that kind of sticks out of it. And it also, looks meat colored. And to us, this flower is not exactly beautiful, and it's not exactly something you'd want to put in a vase in your house. But to a lot of insects, this is like, delish. And so it's quite popular with the insect department. So that's one of my favorites, but I don't know, there's like a lot. I mean, I had to distill this down to
You
12
can
plants, and that was really hard because, the more I researched, the more I was like, wow, what about this? What about that? Um, but anyway, I was able to choose at least 12. So,
And what about the Venus flytrap? That's not up there?
well, the Venus flytrap, yeah, so the Venus flytrap, and
A plant that eats animals?
a plant that eats animals. I know, like how amazing. And this one, so one of the things I wanted to do too was I wanted to make sure that I really hooked kids and made it interesting. So here, I'm just going to read you a little bit about the Venus flytrap. This is the introduction. It says, closer, closer. A plump spider is minding its own business as it climbs over a Venus flytrap. But it's dinner time, and if this plant had a stomach, it would be growling. That's it, nearly there. Now the spider is crawling across the open leaf. It brushes against the first trigger hair, but the Venus flytrap isn't yet sure. Then one of the spider's legs touches a second trigger hair, and snap! In less than a second, the plant slams both lobes of its leaf closed, ensnaring the spider. Gotcha. So again, yeah. So why on earth would a plant like this need to supplement its diet with, insects? Well, it's because the soil is actually very poor quality. And this particular plant, carnivorous plant, lives in South Carolina, North Carolina, and it's very just limited in where it is in the world. But the soil quality there is very poor, and it needs extra nitrogen. So that's why it developed to digest these insects and add to its diet. And there's actually carnivorous plants all over the world. Here's one of, this was actually, it's kind of hard to see because of the split in the page, but this was actually the first illustration I saw from Zoe. And it's the largest carnivorous plant, which is Nepenthes raja. And it actually has a different mechanism. So instead of snapping closed, like the Venus flytrap does, it has this uh, kind of container. And here you see a shrew right there. And even like small rodents like that can get trapped inside. If it falls down and there's kind of like a slippery slope inside, there's these digestive juices in the bottom. Like this is kind of like sci-fi, right? But it's amazing. Another way to survive is by using the nutrients from animals. So yeah, many, many different very cool plants.
So your fascination comes across in your lyrical prose, and I must say the illustrations are fantastic, and I wish kids learned science the same way that you
Oh, I've got you frozen there, Mel. Hmm.
wish. I wish everybody could learn about science in the same way that you teach it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, science is amazing. And I've got actually math books, I've got science books, and the whole goal of
Yeah,
my writing.
before we talk about Anne's life, you have like a whole bunch of titles. You know, eat your math homework. Come
Yeah.
on, how do you eat your math homework? What's that book about? Do you have it around?
Hey, you know what?
Is
Like
it
I was actually a
is it
teacher in a
edible?
former
Is it
life.
edible?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is the book edible?
Oh, well,
Eat this book.
made out of paper, so you could try. I do not recommend it, but the recipes inside are there's all sorts of different recipes. And I actually was a teacher in my former life. And so I always tell the story because this was really the kernel of, hey, I'm going to be an author. It was the day before winter break, and everybody's checked out. Nobody really wants to do anything meaningful. So I said, hey, let's make gingerbread houses. And I just took those, graham cracker crust things, and I had the kids make gingerbread houses. But I said, one caveat, you have to make them mathematical. And so they came up with, the perimeter of the roof, the area of the, whatever, the shape of the windows. And I went home that day and I started playing around with food and math because I was like, you know what? This is like universal. Every single human being on this planet eats food, and not every single human being likes math. So, I don't know. In my experience at least. So yeah, so I kind of put
You
those
know
two
what
things
what
together.
my assignment would be?
What?
My assignment would be I would make you a gingerbread pie.
A gingerbread
No,
pie.
sorry about that.
Ah, okay.
Gingerbread
Like as in
with a
3.14.
3.14, yeah, 786
Kids are
942.
amazingly creative. So you know what? You give them a task and they take off with it.
Yeah, I wish you were my teacher. Okay, so take us back now to little Anne. You know, I have this theory that those of us who write for children are essentially children in our own right, and each of us age. Are you stuck at a particular age?
I like to think so. I mean, I always, I try to I observe kids. I'm like a little, I look at them when they're at the playground and things, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I kind of remember that." And I also like remembering things. So, playground example, I remember, those I forget what they're called, but you get on them and they uh twirl around. What are those called? Like they're big discs.
Merry-go-rounds.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little
Merry-go-rounds.
merry-go-round thing. And so I remember just like, with holding for dear life to that middle part of it. And, my brothers would be in charge of flinging me around, and I'd be like, truly holding on for dear life. Otherwise I'd be, shot outside. And I like thinking about those experiences because it brings me back to, the joy and the curiosity and just the freedom of being a kid. So I think it's really good to always tap into our earlier selves if possible. I mean, being an adult is so boring anyways, half the time.
Okay, so when you go back to the 7-year-old Anne,
Mhm.
is this because of the wonderment of being seven? Did you have some life event in moving from British Columbia? Tell us about your childhood. Was it all
Fun and
berries
games.
and cream?
Well, I was born in Calgary, which is a large city, and I used to walk to school. And then my parents got this harebrained idea that we were going to move to this extremely rural place in the middle of British Columbia, Canada. And my dad built our house, literally, like he built the house, not contractors, but him. And we were in this log house. It was like, sawed on three sides. So the outside had, the log part. And we looked across a lake, and the mountain on the other side of the lake literally had no houses on it. It was hundreds of miles of nothingness. Of course, I say nothingness in terms of humanity, but everythingness in terms of wildlife and plants and the outdoors. So that was kind of a very unique experience. We heated the
One
house
second.
with
So
firewood.
you didn't have neighbors?
Well, we had two neighbors on either side, a little bit further away. So there was kind of a clump of three houses. And then about 3 kilometers away, there was a small village of Nakusp. So it wasn't like we were, we could go to the grocery store. There was no traffic lights though, one road this way, one road that way. Very unique experience. I had to, if I was going to go to college, I had to go way far away, which I,
One
which
second.
I did.
And your parents were hippies or something? What's
No, they weren't hippies at all. They were like, my dad was a shop teacher. So he was like in high school, which was very annoying because very small high school. So, every time I did something, it was like dad found out. But yeah, he was a shop teacher. Mom was a nurse. So they just love the outdoors though, which is why they moved to this small little, community.
and that's one of the things we have in common because I was born in Winnipeg. I don't know whether you know that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh my
I know.
gosh.
Yeah. But I grew up in the city. So after growing up in the middle of nowhere, literally, um, you eventually moved to place where there were people.
I did. I did. Not before I had my first job. My first job was in a one-room school, and I went up there because my friend was also going up there, and she was in Fort St. John. I was out in like literally nothingness. And I had all my students came to me from out, from farms and things. There was a buffalo farm, for example. And so I did that for a year. And literally the only noise you would hear would be the wolves howling at night. None of these cars going past, none of this, city noises. And then I had met my husband on a bicycle trip the summer before, and we decided, we're going to get married. So I moved down to Maryland, and it took me a month to get used to sleeping because all these cars zooming past, and lights, and all this city stuff. So yeah, I have kind of a really interesting background.
How did you go to college? Were you the only person in your college?
Well, no, I had to, so you had to leave home, obviously, and I had to just stay in residence. And it's kind of funny because when I was growing up, I thought, okay, there's two things I could be. I could be a teacher like my dad, or I could be a nurse like my mom. And I hated blood and, just that whole idea of, that sort of thing. So I became a teacher, and you know, so I was kind of like narrow that way, but I was very, very grateful that I got to be a teacher because I was a teacher from the one-room school all the way up to university. I did a stint overseas for almost
Well,
5 years.
we're gonna get there. And then at some stage you did a master's degree in education,
Yep.
and then you found yourself teaching in Sharjah, which
Sharjah. Yeah.
makes you another neighbor of mine.
I know.
So
I know.
you spent time in the Middle East as well.
I did. I
A
did. It was
a
almost five
short plane
years.
ride from me.
Yeah, I know. I know.
تحكي عربي? You speak Arabic?
Um, la.
Why?
That means no. I
So how
mean,
did you?
we were at the American University of Sharjah, and I had little kids at the time, so I have to say my Arabic was not, it wasn't like a priority to learn. I can say shukran, which is, thank you.
Afwan.
It's very important to say shukran.
Mhm. And Ma Salama and other.
Masalama. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's bringing me back. Yeah.
Yeah. And So now take us, fast forward us to this moment in your life where you said, "My calling is to be a children's author." What happened?
Well, yeah, bumps and fits and, twists and turns for sure. I actually started the whole process started while I was in the Middle East, and I had a neighbor who was a really good illustrator. And so we decided, oh my gosh, we got to put this food and math thing together. And so we did a proposal and we ended up selling it. But the book turned out
Now run me through this, because one of the ABCs of getting published is, do not, if you're not the illustrator, don't send illustrations.
oh, I
Find
know.
an agent.
We
What did
broke
you do?
every rule.
What did you do wrong that turned out to be right?
I have no idea. We were just bumbling around in the dark. And, I mean, seriously, it probably would never happen these days, but we just had this idea. Like the idea was food and math. That's literally it. And we put together a couple of illustrations. We put together, slapped together some sort of proposal, sent it off, and, somebody was interested in doing this math book. It turned out to
Was
be, it wasn't Eat Your Math Homework. It was The Secret Life of Math. So it was
okay.
actually nothing to do with food. And
Okay.
I wanted it to be food, and it was like history of math. And so it kind of morphed into, a completely different project. But I did get back to the food and math later on.
What's that? So you published this history of math book
Uh-huh. Yeah.
with what publisher?
Williamson Publishing. Yeah, do I
That's
have it
quite,
here? No.
it's quite incredible.
Well, I
So
don't know. It at the beginning it was maybe a little easier to get in. I don't know, but again, it was like such a bumbling process.
it
So
happens.
it
One of
happens.
the things, and one of the things I've learned after interviewing almost 180 authors, illustrators, agents, and my own rocky trip to publication, which took 72 years,
Wow.
that nothing ever happens in a direct way, or hardly ever.
Yeah.
It's always because these events are so rare.
They just drop in and you're like, whoa, what's
They
going on
drop in.
here?
So give
I've been
yourself so
trying,
give
trying,
so
trying.
give yourself credit. So you got this publishing deal and you published a book without an agent, and you were in the UAE.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
what happened?
Well, there was a lot of, back and forth, and, luckily we could just email back and forth. And I mean, that one took a while to put together. And like I said, it morphed into something quite different than we had initially thought. But it was cool, and I did a lot of, well, I did like ethnomathematics research. And so what that is kind of like cultures and math. And the cool thing to me, I get excited about the most, you know, run of the mill things sometimes. But anyway, I got super excited about how all over the world, different people had the same issues. Okay, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to, collect taxes? How are we going to count things? Because we have to keep track of how many sheep we have. Um, so everybody had the same problems, but they came about it at different, from a different angle. They solved these problems in different ways. And so that's kind of where that book, focused on was, we're all similar people. We all have the same human constraints, same human problems, but the way we solve things has been really interesting and different throughout history. So yeah, it's like a kind of an exploration of the history of math and how we came about doing things the way that we do.
This is incredible. You see, one of the things that you have this ability to do is to find an angle. By the way, do you hear the phone ringing?
Nope.
Good. I have a phone that rings once a year,
Oh,
a land phone, and it's ringing now, just as you're talking about math. Anyway, Anne, what you have, in my estimation, is you have this very creative, not only your writing, which is so lyrical and lovely, but you find an angle, right? You're like a journalist of science.
I try. I mean, I write a lot. I'm pretty prolific, and I write a lot, and a lot just doesn't go anywhere. But
Now, don't become a journalist. Just continue to do the wonderful things you do. And
well, thank you.
the other thing that I'm going to bring up now is own voices in nonfiction.
Mhm.
Okay, um, there's a lot of nonfiction books on astronomy.
Right,
None of them are written by astronomers, or whatever the word is.
right.
Uh, there's science books on dinosaurs for children, and they're not written by paleontologists.
Hmm.
Um, and this gets me thinking, because in fiction, for example, or in nonfiction that are about different kinds of people, right? We
Hmm.
have this own voices thing,
Yeah,
right? That if you're going to write about Passover, you might as well be Jewish.
right.
Um, how do you explain this handle that you have that scientists don't have? I mean, I have a master's degree in botany, and I would never write
Oh.
this beautiful book. No, it's okay. I don't know anything about botany, but I would never write this beautiful book that you did. How do you explain that?
Well, so part of it is my teaching background, and I kind of alluded to this before, how I've taught all over the place. I was never one of those people who could like make up her mind. And so, I've literally taught grade 1 to second year university students, um, except for grade 3s. I've never taught grade 3. So anyway, I kind of attribute it to the fact that teachers, you're given a topic here, have at it. We're changing the curriculum. We're starting this new thing here. You got to figure out how to teach it. And so, I've taught all sorts of things. I've taught math, I've taught science, I've taught, you know, when I first moved to the States from Canada, do you think we studied American history in Canada? That would be a no. And the first year I was teaching fifth grade. Well, guess what? That's American history year. And so I'd read a couple pages ahead. Oh, this George Washington person. Ah, okay. But literally, we knew nothing like that in Canada. So I kind of I feel that in many respects, many people can write about different things. Now the own voices thing, and I understand that because, I, I've got a person in my critique group who writes a lot of Jewish stories, and I wouldn't really feel comfortable doing that because that's not where I'm coming from, and so I would feel kind of in like I was imposing, and it just wouldn't feel right to do that. So I do agree with own voices where possible, but I also think that we shouldn't limit ourselves. The fact that I lived in the Middle East, I could write something from the perspective of a North American person living in the Middle East. That would be totally fine. So I think what happens is as long as we're sensitive and we're not, just diving into something without a lot of research and without a lot of, I talk to people also. Like if I'm going to write something, I talk to, even with this plant book, I talked to a couple of scientists, well, more than a couple, several scientists, just to make sure, because, I didn't study, I'm not a botanist like you are. So we do
Oh,
need to be.
I'm not a botanist. I just have a master's degree.
Oh, well.
It's a long story, but this show is about you. Um, I'm just pointing out, I don't have an answer for this,
Mhm.
and I'm not against it. Like you, I'm in favor of own voices writing about their own experiences,
Right.
and I'm in favor of people like you writing books about botany, because you're able to.
Mel, you've frozen again. Oh my goodness. I don't know if people can still hear me, but you're
Yes,
oh,
they can hear you and they can see
okay,
you
there
and
you
we're
go.
okay.
All right, all good.
So it's just this weird thing that I'm pointing out.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't have a good explanation for it. So
Yeah,
what and what happened? Yeah, I want to go back to Anne. So
okay.
you came back to the States, and how did you become a multi author, a success with a dozen books out and new ones coming out? And wow,
Oh my gosh, Mel, I'm just tenacious and stubborn as all heck. I mean, honestly, I just, well, number one is I'm curious. Okay. So I'll, kind of go down a path. And I don't know. There's just something about me that is like so tenacious and stubborn. And, it's not always a good thing. But I like to think in terms of writing that it can be a good thing if used judiciously. So like I said, I'm a prolific writer. I write a lot, and I see what people want, and I've been
look,
fortunate.
yeah, but you have a book deal now with Candlewick.
Hmm.
That's Candlewick is one of the best.
Yeah.
It's rare. It's rare. How did that happen? You have an agent? How did you
Well,
find
I
your
did,
agent?
I've
Tell
had
us.
I've had a couple of agents. This was with my former agent, and he was also tenacious, and he, sent my proposal out to a number of people, and
Mhm.
as luck would have it, they're like, "Ooh, a plant book, time to, the time and the place."
Okay, there's always luck involved, but the luck has to
Right.
meet a wonderful manuscript. So, and you've had how many times have you been married with agents?
Twice.
So you've had two agents. You're on your second agent now.
Correct.
So you're like a Venus flytrap of agents. Um, how,
I
how
would
did
think not. Oh my gosh. Not good.
no? How did you find them? Like getting an agent is one
Again,
in a
you
million,
just
and
pound the
you've had
pavement.
two.
So yeah, again, you're absolutely right. It always comes down to decent work. So you've got to really, work on your craft, and that is non-negotiable. You got to work on your craft, but you also need like a good idea. And sometimes I've gone down a path and I've written something that I got really interested in, but the idea wasn't, it wasn't grabby enough, it wasn't hooky enough. And again, you have to get back into your, 7-year-old self. And then once you do feel passionate about an idea, you work at your craft, and put it together, and then you just pound the pavement and see who's interested. And it's like I call it feast or famine. Like there's this long period of famine, I'm starving to death. And then all of a sudden there's this little teeny weeny period of, feast.
Who,
And
who
you
is
have
your
to
who
like
is your
jump on it when the feast comes along.
and who is your current agent?
Current agent is Jennifer Unter from the Unter
Ah,
Agency. Yeah.
oh, give her our love.
Yay.
We
No,
need to interview
she's
her.
amazing. She's
Yeah.
lovely.
Oh wow. How did you find Jennifer?
Just query trenches. I do have a friend who is one for clients, so that was helpful. So I knew she was one of my, dream agents. And it wasn't the first time. She didn't like, hop on me the first time I sent her something. I had sent her something before and she was like, me. But she wrote back to me, very lovely rejection. So those lovely rejections, you really have to, embrace those and keep those close to your heart because they mean something. Um, so anyway, so I thought, okay, well, this is one I'm going to try again. So I tried her again with something else, and she was interested. So yeah, so we hopped on board.
That's fantastic. And how many books do you have in the works now?
Well, we just actually signed not too long ago, so we've got a couple of books. Well, with her, I've got a couple of books out on submission. I also have 2 books, one coming out in 26, one coming out in 27, potentially another one. We're still, thank you. Thank you. I'm in the process of negotiating another one. So, we shall see. Again, like I said, this thing goes in fits and starts. So, yeah. So right now there's 2 for sure's though. 2 for sure's coming out.
Fantastic.
Thank
It's
you.
fantastic. A couple of words about the books behind you.
Yeah, well, I always, I like putting them there because I like to remember, what came before. So this one right here, High Flyers, this one was actually really amazing because, well, actually it's part of this series. And I had actually pitched this series, the Women of Power series. Whoops. Ah, okay, there we go. I had pitched the Women of Power series to Chicago Review Press, and I started with extreme sports athletes, and I was quite fascinated by them. And then I did the High Flyers, and the High Flyers has very VIP women in it. So, for example, I was able to interview Senator Duckworth, and 5 minutes, but still, I actually was able to interview a senator. I also interviewed commercial pilots, jet pilots. I don't know if you've ever heard of Tammy Jo Schultz, but she was the one who, she was a Southwest commercial pilot, and the engine blew up in the middle of the flight. And so there she was, her and her co-pilot trying to, figure out how to land this thing safely. And when I was interviewing her, she told me she only made one announcement into the cabin of the airplane. And she said, "We're not going down, we're going to Philly." And every time I say that, even right now,
Wow.
I'm feeling chills because, if you look look it up. This was in 2018. If you look at that airplane, what her and her co-pilot had to land, it was amazing that they were able to. It was just amazing. One person actually did pass on, so I don't want to say it was all, roses. But yeah, so I was able to interview people like that, also astronauts. One of the astronauts in this book, Karen Nyberg, who is an amazing person, just incredibly talented, artistic, science brain, art brain, everything. She and I are writing a book together called A Quilt of Stars, and that's one of my upcoming books that's coming out in 2026. So, you have to go talk to people. That's what I'm saying. I didn't know any astronauts. I'm from some little teeny weeny town in British Columbia. I don't normally talk to senators or astronauts or commercial pilots or jet pilots. But you just have to kind of put yourself out there. And, I've been fortunate that I've been able to connect with people. So it's a wonderful, wonderful profession in that way.
So you did study communications, and it's
Well,
almost.
I guess. I was actually extremely shy as a kid. I like to say I'm an introvert who learned to be an extrovert because you have to be. You can't just, sit behind your desk and just don't talk to people.
I'm the opposite. I'm an extrovert who learned to be an introvert.
Wow, I can't even, oh my gosh, that's like
No,
mind-boggling.
that's for
I
another
can't even
time.
imagine. That's like, ooh, twisting the
I
elastic the other
just,
way.
I just invented it. I don't know if it's right. Um, before we sign off, I want to ask you two questions.
Okay.
Uh, as a scientist and a human being, you've written about plants that smell like death, right? Um, have you ever thought about the plants that smell like heaven, like roses?
Oh
And
yeah,
and roses give off this wonderful scent that is so attractive to human beings, but
hmm
essentially we think those smells are to attract insects.
Right, right.
What is it about human beings that are so insect.
Well, you know what? We live in an amazing world. And, it's just, I'm like, oh my gosh, do I have enough years left of my life to learn everything I want to learn? And you're absolutely right. Like, look at a rose and it's gorgeous. I mean, it's not only does it smell lovely, but if you feel it, it's like soft and it's velvety.
What is the thing here? Why should a rose be attractive to us? There's certainly no biological advantage that I know of that
I
a
know, like
nature,
we're not,
nature
we're
rose.
not pollinators. We're not,
Exactly.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean, well, maybe now we grow them, but anyway,
right.
my last question for you, it might not be my last one, it's my last one right now, is
Okay.
what advice do you have for authors who haven't broken in yet, who haven't had a traditional publishing deal yet? What other pieces of wisdom can you impart?
Well, okay, a couple of things. Number one is surround yourself with a community of other writers, other creatives, can't say that word, creatives. And because you can't really work in a vacuum. You can do it for a short period of time, but you need other people breathing in your space. You need life around you. Another thing is get out, go and do different things, go and, experience life. Because if you're just sitting there in front of your computer going, I have to write 10 pages today, or, one sentence today, then, where's the inspiration? So yeah, you got to go live life. You got to surround yourself with people. And, you also just have to make time for this. If it's your passion, then schedule that time. And, just like you have to brush your teeth every day, maybe you don't have to write every day, but you have to write on a general, a schedule of some sort. Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's, whatever works for you. Everybody has a different, some people pop awake at 1 a.m. and decide they're going to write for half an hour. If that works for you, fine. But scheduling something absolutely important, at least for me, because otherwise, laundry becomes, more important, or, this has to be done or that has to be done. No, writing is part, and honestly, I write every day. Like not every day for hours on end, but I'd say on average at least an hour a day, sometimes up to, if I'm really on a roll, 5 hours a day. Um, and I'm lucky because I have that opportunity to do that. I have the time usually to be able to write like that.
And you
So
you have
yeah.
this amazing ability. I couldn't, you know, I was thinking that the amount of time it took you to write that book, Fantastic Flora, the world's biggest, baddest, and smelliest plants, you could have done a PhD.
Probably.
That's a lot of work. That's a
Yeah.
lot. And that's going to bring me to my last question. Before my last question, but you're also an intrepid sort. You grew up in the woods. You've ridden camels and elephants and driven Formula racing cars, and you like to get out there. I'm assuming that you didn't get too close to the poisonous plants you described, but
No.
there is a feeling of intimacy in your writing,
Hmm.
uh, and that's really wonderful. And my last question for you, Anne, which I'm asking all the wonderful people I know that write tremendous books of nonfiction, as you do, with all your creative energy, where is
Oh, frozen again. Oh my
um
gosh. We're
I said where is the fiction? When am I going to see a book? Actually, I'm going to write this book. The Venus the Venus what's it called? The Venus fly
Venus
trap.
flytrap.
Uh, yeah, Venus fly trap that had indigestion and had to go to the doctor. Um,
Love
when
it.
when when yeah, when am I gonna read the fiction? Fiction is
Well,
also fun.
I know fiction is fun. And so I'm actually in the middle of a middle grade, and this middle grade I've been writing for years and years. And I mean, I must have written that thing, uh, over and over and over and over. But I still have faith that, you know, it's like my whole life. You know, I've lived in different places. I've had jobs that are, you know, all over the place. Like everything's different. So yeah, I'm all in for fiction, and I've got something in the works. We shall see if it goes anywhere, but I'm
Okay,
not giving up.
if it doesn't, I'm still doing this. We have
Yeah,
a date. We have a date.
sounds fantastic.
So this has been wonderful. We haven't been interrupted by any air raid sirens,
Oh,
cats meowing, and it's been really, really terrific interviewing you. I'm going to shout out about your wonderful book, Fantastic Flora, the world's biggest, baddest, and smelliest plants, MIT Kids Press, which is an imprint of Candlewick, illustrated by the amazing Zoë Ingram.
oh,
And,
absolutely.
and you're represented by Jennifer Hunter.
Correct.
And so thank you to all the wonderful people in your life who have inspired you to share your creativity with us. Everybody run out and buy this book if you have 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. It's an amazing book. Your kids will fall in love with everything plant. They will start eating lettuce. But they might not eat
Eating
lettuce.
their vegetables.
They might feel sorry for it. It's been wonderful. So Ann McCallum Staats, this is Mel Rosenberg here, 5 million miles away from you.
Yeah.
Thanking you for this wonderful interview on behalf of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. We're going to send
Thank
everybody to
you.
run and buy your book. Show your book one last time.
There
Hold
it
it
is.
proud. Open it on a page somewhere where people can admire these
Well,
gorgeous.
I'll show you the first page, which is really cool.
Yeah.
These are the Bolivian water lilies, which are huge. So, well, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I forgot that we're, you know, actually being recorded and people are watching this. So it was just a really, really fun conversation with you. So thank you.
My pleasure, Ann. We're going to say goodbye to everybody. You and I are going to come back and go and have a little
Okay.
tete-a-tete.
Sounds
Everybody
good.
else, run and buy Ann's amazing books.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.